on Breakfast with Friends. On Breakfast with Friends.
And there it is, a midweek moment right here on a Breakfast with Friends. So every single Wednesday we have an opportunity just to share something that God has laid upon our heart. And this time around, or at least this morning, my scripture is from Genesis 50, verse 20, and it's we know it. It's a very famous part of passage. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for a good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. And a beautiful scripture, of course, from Genesis 50. And it is, we find Joseph saying that. And as we know the story, he's like just been through so much, man. He really goes through so much. And yet he says this. And I think it's so beautiful because a lot of times, maybe where you find yourself, the situation may not be good. You know, we were chatting about it this morning about how people can be so rude. People can be rude because maybe they are coming from a place where they're not in a good space, they're not in a good situation, and the situation may not be good. People may not be good. Things around you may also not be good. And the question that I want to ask you this morning is, what lens are you using to view God? Are you using the lens that you are currently in right now to view God? So maybe your situation that you're in right now is it's a very tough season, but is that the lens that you're using to view who God is? The fact that someone's being rude to you, or somebody just has a really, really bad day and they're taking it all out to you, and you're like, "Ugh, are you using that to view? Is that the lens that you're using to view God? What lens are you using right now to view God? Sometimes I know that it can really be hard. I don't know where you found yourself. Somebody else's situation, you might think, oh, that situation is like 10 times worse, or it's not as bad as what I'm going through. Yeah, I don't know what you're facing and what you're going through, but I want to remind you this morning, when Joseph says this verse, you meant it for evil against me, but God meant it for my good. He was in a place of also having to go through so much. And if we think of it, I mean, Joseph was that kid, he was that guy that he was his father's favorite. He was loved by his dad. All his brothers knew that he was the favorite, right? Nobody could put it past him that he was the favorite. And he was shown, like, listen, this is my boy, this is my favorite child. He had that special coat, and he went around bragging the fact that he was the man, he was the favorite. And even to a point where he told his brothers, I had a dream, I'm gonna rule, I'm gonna be this, that, and the other. And his brothers were like, no, this is it. This is too much of this guy. We got to take him out. And they sold him. I mean, at the time when he got sold, right? I'm sure he must have been thinking, hmm, is this God? Is God, this is the work of God? He can't be good. Then he lands up in Potiphar. We know what happens. He ends up in prison, and all these things happen. He gets accused. And I'm sure if I was Joseph, I'd be like, huh? This is not God. How is this possible? I mean, this is not good. My situation isn't good. But he presses on and he continues. And then he meets a prisoner, of course, in prison. And he's like, remember me when you get out of here, because he interprets his dream. I'm just trying to like wrap it up quickly because of time. But he's like, hey, remember me when you get out of here. And the prisoner betrays him. He forgets it. He doesn't mention anything about him. He doesn't talk, he doesn't share what he's done. He just forgets about him. He gets betrayed once again. And these things just happen to Joseph one after the other, or just keeps going. And I'm sure all those times when things happen, he's like, this is not good. How is this good? But at the end, we know how the story ends. I mean, through everything that he experiences, it's not good situations, but God is developing his character and he's teaching him, from being the spoiled brat. That's the way I see him, listen, from being the spoiled brat, but everybody's loved him. He's the favorite. Everybody loves him. And to then being sold and being thrown into prison and to be accused and then to be betrayed. But through all of that, God was showing him something. And he was then able to plan ahead. He has a word from God that there's going to be 7 years of famine and 7 years of, that's the of plenty. And he tells he tells us, and he says this, and everything's happening. And that kind of wisdom, he says, This wisdom is not from me, but it's from God. But before that, if we read the scripture, there are moments where Joseph is talking about, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But after he goes through all the situations, he says, this wisdom is not from me, but it's from God. He had to come to a place where he can say, none of this is from me, but it's from him alone. You meant it for my bad, for my evil, for against me. But God turned it around to bring about good, so that many people can be kept alive today. And that's what I want to encourage you this morning, that whatever your situation you find yourself, it might not be good right now, but will you trust that you have a good father, that he has promised you things and he's faithful to his promises? God has promised you something, and none of this, that even though it looks impossible, he is still in control. What we trust, I heard Lisa Turker say this, what we don't trust, we try to control. But if you continue to place your hands in your father's hands, you can 100% trust him and view your life through his lenses and not through your own. Be blessed.